Hi everyone, Boothany Scaretano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia project, Scaring the Hoes. This record is a collaboration between two of the underground's most beloved rappers at the moment, Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia, which is hilariously titled Scaring the Hoes. Which, yes, is obviously a joke, but so ingeniously fitting for their respective approaches to hip-hop music. For those who are out of the know, the idea of scaring the hoes is pretty common vernacular in internet music circles, used to describe music that has kind of a weirdo slant to it or just isn't very widely appealing, maybe out of some insecurity-based fear that you would get weird stares from women, or just harsh the general vibe, which I think says a lot about where this phrase comes from. But with the internet effectively collapsing the mainstream and underground on top of each other, there's this increasingly unignorable truth that some music just doesn't succeed based on its pop appeal or being easy listening. And I think few artists out there understand that as well as Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia. At one point in the early 2010s, Danny Brown was seen as one of the biggest oddities in rap, with absolutely unhinged rhymes loaded with dark and raunchy content, plus his yelpy vocal inflections and left-field production choices, all of which still make him an instantly recognizable figure in today's rap landscape, even more than 10 years after his breakout mixtape, XXX. JPEG Mafia, on the other hand, his blow-up came a bit later, with the release of 2018's Veteran, and in the last 5 years, he's shown himself to also be a groundbreaking and unique oddball. These guys recently did a podcast together hyping up the release of this record, and in the midst of it, Danny jokingly admitted to feeling like Peggy was going to replace him when he first got into his music. And as he continues to grow his brand and his craft, it's not hard to see why JPEG would be the envy of other artists generally. He's kind of a triple threat. He raps, he sings, he produces. All of his major projects thus far just ooze creativity. And despite his genuinely unorthodox approach to rhyme schemes and song structures, he actually has a lot of super catchy tracks out there. But being catchy does not seem to be the name of the game on Scaring the Hoes, which is definitely more than just a funny title, because in practice on this thing, Danny and Peggy embrace some of their most out there creative ideas. Take the title track, for example, whose beat kicks off with these really loud and aggressive slapping sounds, which at first I thought was just clapping, and it may very well be, but if it is, like, man, those are some loud, wet, meaty hands. And as the entire instrumental kicks in, we get booming drums, rumbling bass, and these lengthy horn chops that sound like a saxophone slowly dying. I wouldn't say it's a walk in the park as far as vibe goes, but I suppose I would feel somewhat cheated if a song titled Scaring the Hoes sounded like it was gunning to be a top 40 hit. Of course, Danny and Peggy on the track trade distorted bars about feeling out of step with current trends and pressures to make something that has more of a pop appeal. And honestly, for a record like this, I would say we have a perfect mission statement in terms of Danny and Peggy putting forward their artistic intent here. Which, mind you, these guys have always been clear about, be it in the way Danny has stuck to his trademark vocal delivery over the years, or the way Peggy proudly flies his freak flag and boasts about being difficult to compare or categorize on the song Step a Pig, and does it over one of the most unique beats I've heard this year. And it's insane he produced these tracks on an SP404, which is a pretty legendary machine as far as hip-hop production goes. A lot of classics have been pumped out on this thing, but many current-day producers prefer the freedom and versatility that a digital audio workstation on a computer offers instead. But yeah, it says on the Bandcamp page for this record that the 404 was pretty strictly used in the creation of this project, but it also says that Peggy is now done using the 404 now, which I'm sure, again, has its limitations and its difficulties, but it didn't stop Peggy from very precisely layering these sparkling synth runs, tight bass lines, and beautiful vocal harmonies on this beat. I'm even more blown away by the production on Garbage Pail Kids, which assembles the sounds of children chanting metallic perks, this really loose-ass rhythm, and these fat hits of bass. There's also this genuinely heart-wrenching, sun-scorched series of guitar chords that sound equally wretched and gorgeous. One of my favorite Danny verses on the project also turns up on this track. There's a line where he references this cannabis bar about eating ass, and he audibly makes himself laugh as he does it. Without a doubt, Danny's as wild as he's ever been on this record. The creative and uncompromising bangers continue deeper into the track list. There's the fantastic breakbeat switch switches and cute little synth chord passages on Fentanyl Tester, where Danny gets a huge chance to shine lyrically, which I'm happy about given how short his contribution was to the first teaser track from this thing, Lean Beef Patty. Going into this, I feared there wouldn't really be a lot of space for Danny on the LP, but listening to the entire thing, there's actually plenty. Even going halves with Peggy lyrically on the two-parter Shut Yo Bitch Ass Up and Muddy Waters. The track Perfect, which was also a highlight for me, features these insane horn samples, which sounds like Danny and Peggy are having a rap battle dressed as gladiators in the Roman Colosseum. I guarantee this track has one of the most amazing beats you'll hear this year. From here we move into a pretty strong second half, though there are some shorter and undercooked cuts that don't feel quite as detailed or as amped as some of the best moments thus far, namely Orange Juice Jones and Run the Jewels. But there's also the heavenly sample-heavy number Kingdom Hearts Key, which sounds very much like it could have been a highlight on Peggy's last record, with the unique song progression, the melodious sample chops, as well as Peggy's charismatic delivery on the front end. The record's lone feature turns up on this song too, the young and up-and-coming rapper Redveil, who actually has one of the more standout verses on this project in terms of a performance and energy he brings to the table. He really has like the fire in his belly of a young Tyler the Creator on this one. The descending bass lines and enveloping gospel samples on God Loves You is also just classic JPEG all the way. And this beat is perfectly paired with bars from Danny that have loads of very filthy religious and biblical nods. The gospel vibes come back even better on the track Heaven on Earth, with some tangy organs and lots of huge choral hits. Jack Harlow Combo Meal features some of the nuttiest jazz rap you'll ever hear on planet Earth. In one breath, it is smooth in the way some of the best stuff in this genre typically is, but there's a very left field chaos to it that feels super specific to Danny and JPEG. Then the closer, I would say, is one of the more difficult listens on the LP, with a very quirky, thin rhythm hanging in the background, which is matched with these crushing walls of bass and keys, some fuzzed out samples too, chaotically flying into the mix in every direction. And with that track, this thing ends aggressively, abruptly, and in a very disorderly fashion, definitely leaving the hoes scared and maybe even scarred. I'm feeling a light 9 on this LP. Yeah, it rules. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Dan Brown Mafia, forever.